Okay, it is time to move on to our next panel. Our next panel is Shaping Stories, Representation in Media, Sports, and Entertainment. Now, this panel will explore the evolving presence of AA and NHPI figures in these industries, the challenges that they face, as well as the efforts to expand opportunities across film, television, digital platforms, and e-gaming. Joining us on this panel as moderator is Sam Hyun. Sam serves as the Director of Government Relations for the Asian American Foundation. Sam was named one of the Boston Globe's 2021 Bostonians of the Year. He's been featured in Forbes, Good Morning America, the front page of the Boston Globe, MSNBC, and other publications for his work. Sam is also co-founder of 1587 Sneakers. Please welcome Sam and the panelists to the summit. Good to see you.
Good morning, everyone. It's on? No, it's not on.
Good morning. We still awake? Awesome. Hopefully we're not going to put you guys to sleep. I actually think this is probably the most dynamic panel that you'll listen to all day. I am not at all biased, but we're up on stage with some absolute rock stars. Some you've seen on TV, some you've seen through your phones, some you've seen in real life, and probably in a little bit of shock and awe right now. So I'm really, really excited to announce and introduce our panelists here. Carrie Chow.
What's up, y'all?
Alex Nguyen.
Hey, how's it going, everybody?
Tina Wei Smith, and Annie Wu Henry.
Hi.
So before we get started, I wanted each of you to give a really quick introduction about who you are. I'm also going to highly recommend everybody to please go online onto their social media pages or their websites and look them up yourselves so that we're able to save some time. But Carrie, a little bit about yourself.
Longtime journalist, was at ESPN, one of the first Chinese Americans to anchor at a national sports network, but also wrote about race and culture for ESPN, and just try to represent as much as possible and pay it forward.
What's up, everyone? I am a content creator on TikTok and Instagram that focuses on fashion and lifestyle and just sharing my story and how I'm living my life.
Hi, everyone. I feel like a fish out of water because I've only been in public service, nonprofit, higher education. So I'm not a content creator. Don't look me up because there's not much out there. But here really to talk about the commission that's doing the study of the feasibility of a National Asian Pacific American Museum of History and Culture, which I think is so important and crucial at this moment.
Hi, I'm Annie Wu Henry. I'm an adoptee. I also live in Philadelphia, so big fan of that city. I am a digital and political strategist, doing a lot of work in the new media, creator, and online spaces.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So, all right, we're just going to jump right into it. Carrie, during your time at ESPN and in sports journalism, you were one of the first pioneers to really break through and have our faces be seen on the big screen. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges that you had to endure? And then secondarily, on top of that, follow that up with, what can the community do to help? And what is the state of AAPI in sports journalism today?
So the first thing is, everybody in this room everyone's like a grinder. Everyone here in this room has worked really hard to get where they've gotten. But the other thing that I've noticed in my personal experience in sports journalism is that as I went through that path to try to break down doors, what I didn't know was the support systems around me. And you'll hear this a lot from me. You don't know what you don't know. Especially being a son of an immigrant family, you hear about these traditional roles and the traditional idea of success. And when I saw sports as an opportunity, I'm like, oh, that's what I want to do. And it was immediately reflected with nah, you can't do that. That's not for you. That's not for, and it's not because of malice. It's because of intention, right? You don't want your kids to go through this crazy path. So when I started going to all these different places to try to get to sports journalism or ESPN or whatever it was, once I got there and I looked around and I'm like, well, I made it and I'm so proud, but why am I the only person in this room, right? How come when I look around, there's nobody else like me? And it dawned on me, it's not fair to assume that everyone has the same opportunity to do that same struggle that you do, right? To that same fight. So it's your responsibility to open up that door and make it easier for the next person. If there's any skiers or snowboarders here, I like to say like the black diamond path, right? Like that's the toughest path you go down. And then there's the blue square and the green circle. Like why can't we try to make it a little easier for that next path? So when I got to, as I was struggling, the one thing that I wanted to share here about that challenge is when you get into that space, if you can get into that space, you still have to make sure you own it. And don't let your excellence be denied. And I just want to share one quick anecdote because I can yap on for a while, but I remember I
warned them about not yapping too much.
I know exactly. Y'all, everybody knows Jeremy Lin, right? Everybody knows. So I'm in the Sports Center room to produce the show, and I'm pitching ideas. And at this time, this was about 10 years ago, Jeremy Lin just got dreadlocks. He changed his hairstyle. I don't know if y'all remember that. It was a big controversy. And I said, hey, it would be awesome to have Jeremy Lin on Sports Center to talk about what made him do that? What went into that decision? Because in my like algorithms, what I'm paying attention to, a lot of people are talking about that. And everybody in the Sports Center room, I don't want to talk about what I'll just say I was the only Asian person there. And everybody's like, nah, that's not what Sports Center does. Like, we're not going to watch that. We put on highlights. We put on that type of thing. And I'm like, I'm telling you, people care about this. People are talking about this. And they're like, nah. And I said, hey, if I can get Jeremy to do the interview on my own, if I set this up, can we greenlight this? And sure enough, they're like, okay, fine. We did it, went through a bunch of, through organizations like this and through networking like this, we're able to get a hold of Jeremy. We did a one-on-one and talked about cultural appropriation and what was the decision behind that. Long story short, it took off like gangbusters. The story got a lot of awareness, aggregated to a bunch of different media, and there was success. And that's why it's so important to have representation in these different fields, because it goes back to you don't know what you don't know. And turns out, like, when you tell those stories, there are people who are interested and people who are paying attention. So I know that was kind of I don't want to be a gas bag here and keep yapping, but essentially the story of, for me, the key for everybody here to take away is it's going to be different and difficult in whatever path you take. But once you get there, it's so important that that's not where the end of the journey is. It's making sure the next person can keep following that same path.
We like to show love to our community here. So speaking of showing love, this is Alex's first panel. Can we show a little love to Alex?
Thank you.
Millions of people have seen his face, but this, I think, is the first time in front of, face to face, so they can actually come and talk shit to you after, right? So
Exactly.
Sorry,
So nervous.
The vice president swore last year. I felt like I could drop, a little bit, right? So Alex, you chose a path that is very non-stereotypical, right? Like the model minority myth, like doctor, lawyer, engineer, very linear path. But the path you took is one that's extremely uncharted, right? Wild West.
Right.
What made you go into content creation? What inspired you? What drives you? And what is your motivation for it?
Well, to piggyback off Carrie, it's really about like representation, right? I've never seen anyone that looks like me within the platforms and the social space, the media space. So I felt like, why not us? Like, we have a voice to share as well. Like, we don't have to follow the traditional route that was bestowed on us from our family members, our communities. And I felt like we are very individualistic and have something to share to the world.
Honestly, for a first answer ever on a panel, that was pretty damn good.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
But beyond that, especially I think given in the API space, a lot of content creators, a lot of the ones that we see represented happen to be East Asian. You are a South Asian male.
Correct.
What does that mean to you to have amassed the following that you have, specifically as a Vietnamese American male?
That's a great question. I feel like as a Vietnamese American, like I said, there's not a lot of representation, and our success stories are not highlighted, So being able to go the unconventional route and showcase like my own story through my lens and blend it with my passion, right, outside of my education, my academic background, can be, a light for someone else that feels like, oh, like I can do that too. I can enter these spaces. So.
Wow. Smart, empathetic, fashionable, handsome. Too bad he's
You're
taken.
too kind, bro.
Tina, you have one of the most decorated careers, I think, in the API public service spaces, and I think everyone here in this room knows about the work that you've done at WIAMPI, but you're now at a different stage in your career, and you are leading a foundation and museum work that is critical to the future of our community. Could you talk a little bit about your current role and what you're doing now to advance the future for our people?
Sure. Sam was asking me before about a website for the commission. There isn't a website yet, but we will have one soon, and we'll have an online presence. But the commission, so the name is a mouthful, right? It's the Congressional Commission to Study the Feasibility of a National Asian Pacific American Museum of History and Culture. So shorthand, I'm just going to say commission, but it is not a commission to a museum yet. That has not been, we have not actualized that just yet. I know we will. But I think it's incredibly important time. We've seen the African American Museum stand up here at the National Mall. Some have already toured it, have seen it. If you haven't, you have to go see it. And we've seen the American Latino and also the Women's Museum being authorized by Congress, but still needing to have their placement on the mall. And they already have funding authorized, but we are at the starting point. And I think it's a really pivotal moment where we are going to do a study for the next 18 months. Everything from content to funding, development, sites, just the whole build of the museum. And it's really exciting. But I know we are at the starting gate. And this is going to take, hopefully not decades. I'm hoping that's not decades, but it's going to take folks from across the country and right here in DC and congressional members to actually authorize the plan for the museum. But there's 8 people on the commission, and it's a bipartisan effort. And so I'm really excited and really honored to be in that space, be able to be part of that story at the starting gate of the realization of this museum. And I welcome, folks from across the country to join us, be part of this whole process.
Tina, what is the vision or potential impact that you're hoping to achieve?
Yeah, you think about the National Mall, I think of it as, being representational, and it should be representational, right? It isn't currently now, but it should be representational of all of American history. I'm a millennial, and I grew up in the Northeast. So Californians probably have a different experience. But, remember being in the 90s in school and learning about history. And I remember clearly in high school, there was just this one sentence or maybe 2 on Chinese Americans building the railroad. Right. I clearly remember reading that, but it was just this little blurb in history. And you fast forward to 6 years ago when Secretary Elaine Chao was the Secretary of Transportation, and they were celebrating the 150th anniversary of the Golden Spike. And I think, for that moment of having a Chinese American cabinet member to acknowledge and to be able to celebrate what hasn't been celebrated before, the descendants of the railroad workers, and to think how long that's taken. Right. And she even just learned about the history that I missed out on in my childhood, it's American history. Right. And I do think in our country, in America, I do think that we value the importance of museums and preserving the history, culture, and be able to reflect American history, all American history, right? All of the contributions in our country. So I think this is just so important that, all of our stories. And I think the challenge is the myriad of stories from the Asian American Pacific Islander background. There's so many, just kind of putting that under one roof. So I think that is one of our challenges to do that. But, I want to see on our National Mall that we have that space, right? Not that it's just an exhibit or it's just a wing, right? But that our stories are told on the National Mall.
Amen. I think we deserve that. Absolutely. Annie, you are, definitely one of the most dynamic voices in the political space that we have today. I think the way that you've, courageously chosen to utilize your platform has inspired many, and honestly given an insight onto the way that we can move forward as staff and as in the political space. So could you talk a little bit about how you've built that platform, why you built that platform, and why specifically use it that way when traditionally staffers have always been told to hide and put your head down and just follow the rules.
Yeah, it's a really interesting experience as a political staffer, operative, or whatever you want to call it, because it's really hammered in. It's not about you. It's about the principle. It's not about you. It's about the cause. It's not about you. It's about the organization, which is true. But I do think we are coming into a new age of obviously media exposure and what people want to see and authenticity, especially in political spaces. And that's not always, it's also not just about one person. And so people want to see all of the different people working on it and all of the different people behind the scenes. And I always compare it to kind of like entertainment spaces that you obviously get excited for a movie, but during the press tour, you're very excited when you see the interviews of the people talking about how they interacted behind the scenes or the different things that you didn't get to see on screen. And so I think when it comes to a lot of these issues, and especially issues that matter to specific communities, it's really important that people doing this work talk about why they're doing it and why it matters. Because all of these bills that become laws or all of these things that are brought forward in all of these different buildings by elected officials and all of these people with big important titles, which I'm not trying to downgrade, they're very important. But that is possible because of so many people's work. And I think that it's really important that the people who are doing that work for like really important reasons and oftentimes for really personal reasons, are able to talk about why that is. I still think, you gotta give respect of staying in your lane and being careful about that. But I do think there is something additive to that overall thing that also can help the principal or the organization or whatever be more authentic because of who all they have in their corner.
For each one of you, whether you choose to wear the hat that you're currently wearing in your specific professional roles or just as a member of the community, what are the challenges that each one of you feel like is the most pressing that we are facing today?
This is a great question. I kind of want to piggyback off Tina and Annie, what y'all said about the museum and the education, and then also like one of the things when it comes to representation for me that I always think of is, where do people who don't have access to different cultures, how do they learn about the different cultures and different stories, right? And media has changed everything now. Like, and what Alex is doing and the content creation has changed the game. But when most of us grew up, it was like, there's three main ways you find out. You find out about other cultures, you learn from education. I remember that same paragraph blurb about San Francisco, Chinatown, and the railroads when I grew up. And I quite honestly, I shunned a lot of my culture. Like, I think a lot of us have some of this burden that we did because we never saw each other. We didn't know. We were trying so hard to assimilate and be accepted. And finally, now owning our own space. But like, it's education, it's political representation, Annie, what you're talking about. Like, if you have your representatives watching out for you and taking care of you. And then the third would be, for me, and my theory is pop culture. And that's where I don't want to call it a latchkey kid, but I grew up like watching a ton of TV, right? And the TV was a partial parent. And I'm like, dang, never do I see what I want to see. And then the one time I do, oh, y'all know, like, that's the worst portrayal. It's like, that's what y'all think of me? That's what y'all think my culture is? And then that's why, like, if those are the way people are learning about our cultures, it goes back to like, why this is so important and why it's not just like, and then this is my long way of getting to answer your question, Sam, for my opinion, is now that audiences get all their information tailored to them, you're on your algos, you're on your phones, and you're not watching all the different TV shows that you were forced to watch when we were kids, right? Now you get your algos, and this famous Chinese proverb that I love to say, it's about this frog in the well. And a shout out if anybody knows this one, because there's a frog who lives in a well, and he looks up and he thinks the sky is the size of that circle. So he's never been outside of that dang well. And then we all know the sky is so much bigger than that. But right now, because of the way people are consuming their information and the way the information is fed to them, we are in danger of not seeing more of that sky and just thinking that sky is that much. So to answer your question about what I personally think is one of the biggest challenges is not just supporting creators like Alex, because the algorithm, if I don't know Alex, his ish is not going to pop up on my feed. How do I find out about him? I know from my experience at ESPN and afterwards at NBC, like, people don't know about me. You got to be proactive to find you. And then, based off of all the information on all the YouTube and all the data, if I am not proactive in doing that, I'm going to be fed that same stuff, and it's going to just funnel me into more of that information, and I'm not going to see what Tina's doing and the museum. And that's why it's so amazing and important to tell those stories, because they're going to get hidden. I'm not going to see what Annie's doing. So to me, like, it goes back to that paying it forward part where, like, and Sam too, like, we keep talking, like, Sam, I don't know if y'all know Sam's credentials here. Sam's insane. Like, if we don't go out and promote what everybody is doing, it is not going to be seen. It is not Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will not come. You've got to go beyond that, right? That to me is the biggest struggle that I found, because we don't know what we don't know. I don't know that Alex is doing all this stuff. And if it doesn't come across to me, that's why it's so amazing to be in these organizations and be at these panels, because now my sky is opening up and I'm seeing this other stuff that's around. I'm like, oh, I want to follow this person. I want to promote this person. How do I support this person? This person's got a book out or whatever. Like, how do I go out and support? That to me is the biggest thing, is like, it's not just breaking through that barrier of like of talking about X or achieving X. It's like, okay, we need other people also to support, because, you know, we keep talking about representation, but like, if nobody's there to support the people who break that barrier, guess what? The stereotypes will perpetuate, right? Like, I can't imagine your journey, like, as a content creator. Like, if you don't get that support, like, would you want your kids or whomever, like, not, you know, like the future generation, do you want to have people do that path? Like, no, you need that support. That's, to me, that's my diatribe.
And I can feel Annie's energy. She's ready to go. So, Annie.
No, if I could go off of that, I think that's a big challenge, but that's also a big opportunity. As someone who does a lot in like the new media spaces, and I think we can talk about legacy and new media, and I think a lot of times we look at them as opposing forces, and they're not. They should work symbiotically together. But what the new online space has done has given everyone the ability to have their voice heard, to tell their story, to talk about things, to educate, to give their perspectives. It's democratized the way, in best cases, it's democratized the way that we are able to have the same opportunity as oftentimes people in marginalized groups or underrepresented groups or silenced groups have not. And so, you know, we can't control every algorithm. Some are different than others. But part of it is also us, you know, like you were saying, we can seek people out. And there is we made the right person famous. We helped the right person. We as a community can uplift people that we are interested in seeing. We can help make them more popular and support their work. And we're able to do that. And they own their media in a new way that in more legacy times has been owned by corporations or things like that in new media spaces. Like Alex's media it's owned by him, which I think is really incredible. And so us as consumers, you know, while networks and things like that, sure, they have data, viewers or whoever, but those decisions of who they bring in, who they keep on, what talent they think they need is oftentimes made by, you know, usually white CEOs, or like usually majority white or definitely not majority AANHPI board members that we don't have to necessarily work with in these new spaces. And so I do, while it's definitely a challenge, I do think it's also a tremendous opportunity for us to be able to support our community, to support people doing that work, and also to encourage people in our community to feel empowered to use their voices and use the resources or talents they have. Because I think with things like the model minority myth, or with what, you know, we've been maybe traditionally told we should or should not do, we haven't been maybe as loud about our community or about our history or about things that we experience as we perhaps could be. And so I also think it's a responsibility that we can take to make sure that we are using now the resources we have to make those efforts and make it less deniable.
Wow, that's a hard one to follow. A lot of y'all have
Got this.
a lot of y'all have said the same thing I would say, and to piggyback off Carrie is like, for example, like community is very key with what we're doing. I feel like all of us are going a different path, like from the traditional route, and being able to support each other. Like I've never seen any of these people's content before, but now that we're here, like I feel this overwhelming like support to like follow their journey and like see them succeed. And being able to do that is like very important, because a lot of us, I feel like, are first to the table, first to break the barrier, like first generation. And what's the point if we're not breaking bread and opening up these doors for the next generation, right? And solidifying our space within these different industries.
I feel so like archaic here next to like new media and like TikTok. And
I got you.
No, we need, you are the bedrock of our foundation. You're the foundation that we have built.
Where do I sign up?
But no, I mean, like, look, personally speaking, I've got 4 kiddos, ages 2.5 to 9. And I know there's a lot of parents in the room as well. And just thinking back on my own childhood, right, and what I was exposed to. And recently, I'm also in the South, I'm in Kentucky. And there's a thing called Dolly Parton's Imagination Something. Like, there's a whole literacy program that it's awesome, kind of like DC, where you get a monthly free subscription to books, ages 0 to 5. And it's fantastic. And so, you know, we get monthly books, and we got one. And I'm reading this to my almost 3-year-old. And I've never seen this book before. It's a Taiwanese American family. They didn't have to say it, but the way, you know, how they named the grandparents, and my family's from Taiwan originally. And I mean, this is a book that went out, you know, in a large area, and it's reflective of my upbringing. And it was about, how do you say I love you without saying I love you? Right. And I think a lot of people can, you know, experience that still now yet. Right. But that's, you know, in the ways that my parents did things for me. Right. And so just reading that to her, and for her to point out, that's Ama, that's Yaya. And that literally looks like Ama and Yaya. Right. Like, my kids are confused because they couldn't say gong, they couldn't say agong, Taiwanese for grandparents, and so we taught them to say yaya, and now they won't stop doing it, and so it's just confusing. But anyhow, just like be able to do that and read that to my child. I never seen this book before. There's just, I see so much more progress and opportunity, and just more that can be done, of course. But I mean, even just in the last few decades, right? And looking at the different movements across the country on API curriculum for K through 12 in states like Arizona and Alaska. There's an organization called Make Us Visible, and others, you know, that are working on getting more, you know, passing legislation state by state. And I think that's well connected with this museum work and actualizing a museum here in our national mall, in the, you know, the capital of our country. And I see a lot of these opportunities, and there's certainly a lot of challenges leading up to this. And maybe if I can just kind of make a selling point, and Crystal Kai is our ED, the executive director for the commission. I know everyone in the room knows Crystal. And so if you have questions, you can go Crystal afterwards as well, right? But we have 18 months to complete this report. All the other commissions had 2-3+ years. Right, we have a shorter window of time to get the job done. And we also did not get any federal funding to do this work. You know, and we don't, you know, there's a whole prohibition on having any federal resources. We can't detail anyone from the federal government. So we are fundraising. We're actively fundraising. And I'm just going to throw it out there because hopefully there are folks in the room who are interested, because we're actively fundraising, and we don't have a lot of time to fundraise to kind of get the work started and completed. But at the same time, I do think, you know, there's a lot of interest. And we're going to be, you know, collecting all of those stories and input from across the country, and, you know, the different pockets of communities in the country. And so really excited to get folks on board and join us in this mission. And I think I'm kind of like going off on a tangent. But, I think it's so important, no matter the time period, that we are working bipartisanly in this effort, because it is a bipartisan effort, and we need all folks of all backgrounds to work together to actually, bring life to this museum. And I'm just excited to work with folks on this.
So if you haven't already thought about it, let's figure out a way that we can support each one of our panelists here in the work that they're doing. Because the reality is that, the leaders of our community are not always the people that are at the front with the mic that are the most visible. The leaders are each one of you, right? You impact somebody, some way, somehow, some form, each and every day that you are living your life. And you have to view yourself as a leader. And so for me, as we're really talking about representation here, at TAF, we just released our survey for kind of the state of where we are as a community. Can anyone here tell me, during our survey, we asked, who is the most famous Asian American that you can think of? Can anyone here tell me who they think that is?
Kamala Harris?
I got to guess.
Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan?
Jackie Chan? Anyone else?
Jackie Chan.
Jackie Chan? First of all, Jackie Chan's not Asian American.
I would say Kamala Harris, but it's that might just be my being in DC.
The answer was nobody. The answer was nobody. When TAF was formed 4 or 5 years ago, it was because there was a report that came out that said 0.2% of all philanthropic dollars had gone to the API community over the past 20 years. We are the fastest growing racial demographic in the country. We make up nearly 9% of the US population. We over-index in the purchasing power and the economy of this country. And we have undeniably contributed to the fabric and the building of who we are as the United States. And yet this country continues to tell us that we're not worth it. But part of that problem is because we ourselves don't always believe that we are worth it. There's a difference between not standing up for yourself and being told to shut up. There's a difference between not standing up for yourself and being told to sit down. And too oftentimes that is the reality of who we face as a country. But when is it that we collectively also will look at each other and say, when someone is one of our community gets told to shut up, that we'll say, no, you don't tell them to shut up. We're going to speak up for them. And the question that I hear all the time about political candidates, projects, founders, anyone in our community, when I'm going around trying to raise support for them, is from our own people, not from other folks, from our own people, is, are they viable? Why aren't we asking, how do we make you undeniable? When we have a $1.9 trillion purchasing power, we have deserved to be celebrated, and yet we continue to question ourselves. Our reality will not change until we realize that we deserve to be celebrated unapologetically, that we deserve our seat at the table. We deserve to not just have a seat at the table, but we're going to build the damn house, and it's going to be so much better than everyone else's. They're going to want to come to our party. And that is the power of APAICS. And what Madeline and the team have built here is that they have built that house. They've built that house that we are now being able to enjoy, celebrate ourselves, and be able to actually build power in the city, in the area in which all the power in the world circles around. So before I end this panel, and I want to first of all get a huge round of applause for our panelists here. But more importantly, if there's APAICS staff here and volunteers, if you all could stand up. Madeline, that includes you. If you've been a fellow, if you've contributed in any which way, if you've been a part of the APAICS family at any point, please stand up. We are here because of them, and we are here because of you. And the future of our community is so bright because of each and every one of you. And I cannot thank you enough for sitting here through this panel. And really just as we go forward, I hope you continue to ask yourselves, instead of asking others and each other, Are you viable? Ask yourself, how do we make you undeniable? Thank you.